You are sitting here, comfortable, free to pause, free to walk away. But for millions of people throughout history, that freedom didn't exist. Someone, somewhere, decided it shouldn't, and that someone climbed a very specific ladder to reach the power to make that decision. Today, we're going to walk up that ladder together, rung by rung. And by the time we reach the top, you'll understand something terrifying, how ordinary it all begins. Level 1, the local strongman. You control a village, a few hundred people, maybe a few thousand. You didn't inherit this power. You took it. Perhaps you were the toughest man in a region broken by civil war. Perhaps you were a criminal who eliminated every rival until the streets fell silent at your name. It doesn't matter how you got here. What matters is that you are the law now. There is no police except you. There is no court except you. When two men fight over land, they come to you. When a woman is wronged, she comes to you. Your word ends the argument. Your fist ends the resistance. Everyone pays tribute. The farmers cut your portion before they feed their children. The merchants set aside your percentage before they count their profit. In exchange, you don't burn their houses. That's the deal. Ancient as time, as brutal as hunger. You live better than anyone around you. The best house, the best food, the best of everything. Your men stay loyal because you feed them and because crossing you is the last thing anyone ever does. You have made examples. Everyone remembers. But your power ends at the tree line. A larger warlord could swallow you. A government with real soldiers could crush you. You survive by being too small to bother, too remote to reach, and always willing to kneel when something bigger passes through. You are a parasite on a broken system. You know it. You don't care. Level 2, the warlord. You command thousands of men now. You hold a region. Your army isn't professional. It's desperate. Boys with nothing to lose. Veterans who have known only war since childhood. AK-47s and pickup trucks, and the willingness to die for a percentage of whatever you control. You've learned something the books don't teach. Territory without resources is just liability. You seek what generates money. Diamonds, drugs, oil, timber, smuggling routes. The money buys weapons. The weapons hold the territory. The territory generates more money. You're not building a nation. You're running a violent enterprise with military logistics. Think of figures like Jonas Savimbi in Angola, who held the country in a stranglehold of resource war for 3 decades. Think of the warlords of Somalia who carved a nation into personal fiefdoms while millions starved. That's your model. You don't need elections. You don't need legitimacy. You need guns and money and men willing to use them. Level 3, the revolutionary. You were nobody once, a lawyer, a student, an officer passed over for promotion one too many times. But you had ideas, dangerous ideas, ideas about justice and liberation and the people's right to be free. So you organized, quietly first, then loudly, then violently. You promised to tear down everything rotten and build something clean in its place. And it worked. The revolution succeeded. Now, you stand at the top of the ruin you helped create, and you face the nightmare that every revolutionary faces. It is much easier to destroy a system than to build one. The skills that win revolutions: charisma, ruthlessness, the ability to inspire people to die for an idea, are not the skills that balance a budget or run a bureaucracy. Fidel Castro was a genius of revolutionary warfare. He was a catastrophe of economic management. Robert Mugabe liberated Zimbabwe from colonial rule. He then destroyed it through decades of mismanagement and paranoid brutality. You look around at the competent people you need and discover that most of them fled, or were killed, or are sitting in your prisons because they were on the wrong side. You have legitimacy. You have passion. You may not have the ability to deliver what you promised. And that gap between promise and reality is where tyranny is born. Level 4. The populist. You were elected. There was a campaign. There were votes. The process was more or less real. But you didn't win on policy. You won on anger. You gave people a name for everything that was wrong with their lives. You gave them an enemy, the elite, the foreigners, the corrupt establishment that had been stealing from them for years. You were the champion of the forgotten people, and they carried you to power. Now comes the question every populist faces in private. Was I telling the truth, or was I performing? Because the people who voted for you believed in you completely. They believed in the version of yourself that you sold them, and they will follow you off any cliff as long as you keep speaking their language. You fill the courts with loyalists. You reward your allies with contracts and positions. You call it democracy. The people voted for this, and you are the people's man. When the press questions you, you call them enemies. When the opposition challenges you, you call them traitors. You haven't crossed the line into dictatorship yet, but you're running your finger along it, and you're starting to enjoy how it feels. Think of Juan Perón in Argentina, who mastered this level so completely that Peronism became a religion. Think of Hugo Chavez, who started as a genuine reformer and ended up dismantling every institution that could check his power. The slide is gradual. Each step feels justified. Each crisis is an excuse to consolidate just a little more. Level 5. The coup leader. You were a general, maybe a colonel, and you watched the civilian government fail. The economy was collapsing. The country was losing a war. Corruption had eaten everything hollow. The politicians were incompetent clowns, and the country was burning. Someone had to act. You believed that. You needed to believe that. Tanks in the streets at dawn. Soldiers at the television station. The president escorted from his office, or fleeing, or shot. The announcement, "This is a temporary measure. Order will be restored. Democracy will return." You meant it when you said it, or you told yourself you did. But order is fragile, and power is addictive. Every time you think about returning to the barracks, there's a new crisis that only you can handle. The country needs stability. The country needs a strong hand. The country needs you. History is full of generals who said this. Pinochet in Chile, Idi Amin in Uganda, the Brazilian military junta that ruled for 21 years. They all meant to leave. They all found reasons to stay. You govern by decree. The parliament is theater, or it's gone. Your cabinet is full of officers who understand loyalty and punishment. The economy is managed like a military operation. Commands from the top, execution below, punish failure, never question orders. It's efficient, in a way. It's also fragile. When something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong, there's no one to blame but you. And the men around you are watching. They know how this is done. They helped you do it. Level 6. The party ruler. You control the party. The party controls the country. This is the model of every regime that dresses dictatorship in ideology. The Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, Maoist China, Ba'athist Iraq. There are elections, but only one party can win. There is debate, but only within the limits the party allows. There is a constitution, but the party rewrites it when convenient. You rose through the party's ranks over decades. You demonstrated loyalty. You outmaneuvered rivals. You formed alliances and waited for the old guard to die or be purged. And now you sit at the summit of a machine that has tremendous inertia. You cannot rule alone. The party has factions, interests, institutions that must be managed. But you cannot be challenged. You control enough of the apparatus to crush any dissent before it grows. The advantage is stability. No elections to lose. No peaceful transitions of power. The disadvantage is ossification. The party rewards loyalty over competence. Problems get covered up rather than solved. Bad news doesn't reach you because delivering bad news is career suicide. You make decisions based on reports that tell you what people think you want to hear. You are simultaneously the most powerful and the least informed person in the country. Level 7. The president for life. Elections became inconvenient. You removed the term limits. You staffed the Electoral Commission with your people. The opposition parties still exist, technically, but they're starved of funding, denied media access, harassed by tax authorities and security services. Elections happen on schedule. International observers sometimes attend. Everyone knows the result before the first vote is cast. You've been in power for 20 years, maybe 30. You've seen everything. Survived coup attempts, outlasted economic crises, weathered international isolation. You're still here, and you've started to believe something dangerous, that you and the country are the same thing. To love the country is to love you. To criticize you is to betray the country. Your image is everywhere. Airports, stadiums, school books, the faces of children looking at portraits of you before they learn to read. You know much of the adoration is performance. People learn to perform it so completely that the performance and the belief become indistinguishable. Robert Mugabe held Zimbabwe for 37 years. Mobutu Sese Seko held the Congo for 32. Muammar Gaddafi held Libya for 42. They all believed they were irreplaceable. They all discovered eventually that they were not. Level 8. The kleptocrat. At some point, power stopped being about ideology. Maybe it never was. The goal now is extraction. Everything of value in the country flows through companies you or your family or your inner circle control. Oil revenues, mining licenses, foreign aid, infrastructure contracts, customs revenue, all of it. You are not governing a country. You are looting it in real time while keeping enough order that the looting can continue. Your personal wealth is measured in billions. Apartments in Paris, yachts in Monaco, children educated at Oxford and Yale, bank accounts in Zurich and the Cayman Islands. All of it bought with money stolen from people who earn a few dollars a day. Western newspapers write about it. Western governments occasionally protest it. Nothing stops it. Because you also control resources that the West needs, and you know how to use that leverage. The journalist who investigated your family's finances was found dead. The activist who organized protests about corruption disappeared into a prison somewhere. You justify it when you bother to justify anything at all. Everyone steals. You just do it at scale. And at least there's no civil war. At least there's some kind of functioning state. You are a parasite, yes, but a parasite that knows not to kill the host. Level 9. The totalitarian. You don't just control the government, you control the society. The economy is planned by the state, which means by you. The media is owned by the state, which means by you. The schools teach what you approve. The churches preach what you permit. There are no private spaces, no part of life untouched by the state's reach. The apparatus is enormous. Secret police, informers in every factory, every apartment building, every family, files on every citizen recording their statements, their associations, their suspected thoughts. In Stalin's Soviet Union, an estimated 20 million people passed through the Gulag system. In Mao's China, tens of millions died in preventable famines, while the state maintained the fiction that harvests were record-breaking. In Kim Il-sung's North Korea, a surveillance state was constructed so total that it has persisted for 3 generations. The population lives in fear. But fear is exhausting. Over time, fear becomes numbness. Surveillance becomes invisible. People learn what not to say, what not to think, what not to want. The totalitarian project doesn't just control bodies, it reaches into minds and reshapes them. That is both its greatest achievement and its greatest crime. Level 10. The cult of personality. You are no longer a president or a general. You have become something approaching a god. Your official biography contains miracles. Your words are treated as scripture. Your image gazes down from every wall, in every room, in every school, every office, every home in the country. Children sing songs about you before they understand what the words mean. This didn't happen by accident. You invested enormous resources in constructing this mythology. Propaganda units, artists and poets whose only job is to glorify you. The execution of anyone who fails to show sufficient enthusiasm. Kim Jong-il of North Korea was said to have been born under a double rainbow on a sacred mountain as 2 new stars appeared in the sky. Stalin was called the father of nations, the great leader, the gardener of human happiness. These were not jokes. They were state doctrine. Belief was mandatory, and mandatory belief, maintained over generations, eventually becomes sincere. The danger of becoming a god is that gods cannot be wrong. When the harvest fails, it cannot be your policy that caused it. It must be saboteurs. When the war goes badly, it cannot be your strategy. It must be traitors. You are surrounded by people who tell you only what you want to hear, not to deceive you, but because reality itself must conform to your infallibility. You live in a palace made of lies, and your country pays for every one of them in blood. Level 11. The monster. You have crossed the final line. You are no longer content to rule, to steal, to control. You have decided that certain categories of human beings should not exist. An ethnic group, a class, a religion, a political tendency. People you have defined as enemies, not of you specifically, but of the idea of the country, of history, of the future, and you have the power to act on that definition. You have built the camps. You have signed the orders. You have created the bureaucratic machinery of mass death and staffed it with ordinary men who punch the clock and fill the quotas and go home to their families at night. Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, the Rwandan architects of genocide. They all had rationales. The rationale is always coherent from the inside. It always sounds insane from the outside. It always ends the same way. Millions of human beings dead because one person decided they should be. This is what absolute power enables. Not just corruption, not just incompetence, not just oppression, extermination. Level 12. The legacy. You are dead now, or you're still alive. A withered old man in a palace surrounded by portraits of yourself in your prime, waiting for the end that you once believed would never come. But your death matters less than what you leave behind. The institutions you destroyed don't rebuild themselves. The people you killed don't come back. The trauma you inflicted echoes through generations. Children born 20 years after the end of your regime will carry its marks without knowing why. The economy distorted by your mismanagement will take decades to correct. The culture of silence and fear and informing and self-censorship, that doesn't disappear when you do. And somewhere, right now, someone is watching, learning, reading your history and thinking, I would do it differently. I wouldn't make those mistakes. I'm smarter, more careful, more virtuous. They won't be. The path is the same. The choices are the same. The first time you cross a line you said you'd never cross is the hardest. The second time is easier. The 100th time, you don't think about it at all. The human capacity to adapt to atrocity is infinite. That's how ordinary people become monsters, not through some sudden transformation, but through 1,000 small decisions, each one feeling necessary at the time. Every dictator believes the rules don't apply to them. That's the core of it. They are chosen, special, destined. The rules constrain ordinary people. They exist for the greater good. They must be broken for the future, for the nation, for the people. But here is the truth that none of them ever understand. The power was never real. Not in the way they thought. It was borrowed from the people who chose to obey, who chose to look away, who chose not to resist. And the moment enough people choose differently, it evaporates. Ceausescu was still giving speeches when the crowd began to boo. Within 72 hours, he was dead against a wall. The transition from absolute power to absolute powerlessness can happen between breakfast and dinner. And yet they keep coming. The strongmen, the populists, the generals, the ideologues. Each one convinced they'll be different. Each one climbing the same ladder, rung by rung, choice by choice. Each one arriving at the top to discover it's a cage. Alone, paranoid, unable to trust anyone, unable to leave, trapped by the very power they spent their lives chasing. That's the final truth about every level of dictator. The prison is built from the inside. If this video made you see something you hadn't seen before, if it made you think about history, about power, about how fragile the world we live in really is, then leave a comment below. Tell me which level you found most chilling. Share this with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper. And hit that like button because everyone matters. And this kind of content only survives when people like you make sure it reaches someone who needs it. Stay curious, stay awake, and never stop asking who is climbing the ladder in your own time.